Good morning. My name is Pastor Veronica Smith, and I am here with a morning devotion for you. We have been looking at the past couple of Wednesdays a book by Rob Bell called Velvet Elvis: Repainting the Christian Faith. And we spent a lot of time looking at that, and I don't want to read the whole book to you cover to cover. So what I really wanted to do was to introduce it to you, get you thinking, and then encourage you to get your own copy of Rob Bell's Velvet Elvis. So I hope that you've done that. Zondervan is the publishing company that prints out that book. So I hope that you will get yourself a copy. But today I want to start on something new. It's not really that new at all. It's actually been around for a while. But this is one of my favorite books that I got when I was first just starting out as a pastor, and it's called When God is Silent, and it's by Barbara Brown Taylor. And Barbara Brown Taylor is a preaching professor, and this book is actually a series of preaching lectures that were done at Yale Divinity School, and they were printed into a book form, and I absolutely love it. And I have a couple of sections that I read over and over and over again. In fact, my original copy was so beat up that I had to get myself another copy because the pages were falling apart. So what I want to read for you is just the first section of her preaching lecture series. And this was actually, this series was written for not just, not for seminary students, not just for seminary students, not just for pastors or, church leaders, but for all people. It's very easy to understand, very gentle, and gives a lot of really good discussion. And my favorite part about chapter 1, which is called Famine, is the way in which it helps give folks who aren't pastors sort of a peek into what it is like for a pastor to preach a message. And it also talks a little bit about public speaking. So if in your vocation, whatever it is, you have public speaking, you will definitely be able to resonate with this. So let's begin. How shall I break the silence? What word is more eloquent than the silence itself? In the moments before a word is spoken, anything is possible. The empty air is formless void waiting to be addressed. Depending on what is said, Earth could be all ocean, a blue water world in space. Adam could be a self-regenerating monk who sleeps alone by the glow of 2 moons, or 3, and has to make his own decision about the fruit of that one beguiling tree. Anything is possible until God exhales, inspiring the void first with wind and then with the word, which is both utterance and act, which makes something out of nothing by saying that it is so. God says, and the Logos yields the cosmos. God says, and a solemn procession of creatures steps out of the darkness, so steady on their feet that it is hard to believe that they are using them for the first time. God says, and there are bats, bluebirds, fireflies, and luna moths. God says, and there are seahorses, manta rays, plankton, and clams. But the most dangerous word God ever says is Adam. All by itself, it is no more than a pile of dust. Nothing to be concerned about, really. But by following it with the words for image and dominion, God sifts divinity into that dust, endowing it with things that belong to God alone. When God is through with it, this dust will bear the divine likeness. When God is through with it, this dust will exercise God's own dominion, not by flexing its muscles, but by using its tongue. Up to this point in the story, God has owned the monopoly on speech. Only God has had the power to make something out of nothing by saying it is so. Now, in this act of shocking generosity, God's stock goes public. So God created humankind in God's image. In the image of God, God created them. Male and female, God created them. Human beings endowed by God with the power of the word. Anyone who stands up in front of other human beings to speak knows what a frightful gift it is. This power of ours has no safety catch on it. We are as likely to make nothing out of something as the other way around. According to one survey of people's greatest fears, fear of public speaking rates much higher than fear of sickness or death. The fear of self-exposure is basic to our nature, along with the fear of judgment by our peers. However, even if you are well prepared, there is nothing like that moment of silence before you begin, when you look out at all those waiting faces and wonder if you are about to waste their time. Have you done your homework? Are your words the very best you could find? Will your body cooperate? Will your face, your voice, your spine, your hands help you make your point or contradict it? How will you break the silence? What can you say that will be more eloquent than the silence itself? When the speech delivered happens to be a sermon, the stakes go up even higher. The conversation is no longer two-way but three-way, and the fear of judgment by one's peers takes a back seat to a more potent fear. There is a text and a presence within the text that wishes to be heard. The preacher must listen as well as speak, performing an act that is more complicated than solitary creation. The preacher's task is to create speech with one who has already spoken, to interpret what has already been said, so that it sings in the ear as something heard for the first time. There are a dozen things that must go right in order for communication to occur, and not all of them are under a speaker's control. Because language is a communal act, as much depends on those who listen as on those who speak. Every word is a smoke signal sent up with great effort. The fire must be very hot. The wood must be very green. The wet blanket must be lowered and lifted at just the right moments. But none of those is any guarantee. If no one is watching the sky, you might as well be roasting marshmallows. In order for communication to occur, you need someone watching who also knows the language. Even a knowledgeable partner is no guarantee that the message sent will be the message received. Language is porous, not solid. Every word carries its own history inside of it. A word such as charity does not mean the same thing now as it did 100 years ago. Depending on a listener's own history with the word, the hearing of it may evoke a glow of contentment or a flush of shame. Send up a smoke signal that says, practice charity, and one person who sees it will go kiss her rebellious teenager, while someone else will start rummaging through his closet for old clothes to give away. A third, who is perhaps most typical of our age, will have no context for responding to the word at all. The inherent instability of language seems to be of more concern in literary circles than in homiletical ones. While the scholars of deconstructionism insist that even our best, most carefully chosen words are not sturdy enough to bear the truth, most preachers wield words such as God or faith as if they were made out of steel instead of air. It's not hard to understand why. Like the rest of us, those speakers rely on such language to pin down the flapping edges of the universe, even when it does not match up with all that we know to be true. So that is the section that I have for you today. A very short section, just a few pages long. And like I said, I would always encourage you, whatever books I'm using for devotions, I would encourage you to get yourself a copy as well. And again, this one is called When God is Silent by Barbara Brown Taylor. When I got my copy, it was about $10, and I imagine it's probably about the same. But it's published through Cloister Books. And like I said, it's a collection of sermons that she gave as part of a presentation at Yale Divinity School. So that section is pretty interesting, but I love the way that it makes us think about the power of our words. And it's one of the things that I take most seriously about my job as a pastor, that I make sure that the words that I say are considered before they're spoken. And I do know that sometimes people hear the words that I speak and they don't like them. They disagree with them. They feel uncomfortable with them. Sometimes words that I'm hoping are going to cause discomfort or challenge people feel perfectly comfortable with. And so I don't always know the impact of my words until after I'm done speaking them. And that's true for all of us when we speak. We never really know for sure how others are going to respond. How we visualize the words coming out and being experienced can be completely different than someone else. And what I like about what Barbara Brown Taylor says is that more of what the words mean in dialogue or in preaching or public speaking has to do with the person who's hearing and what their background is. The idea that the word charity can mean something completely different depending on the person is almost amusing to me, because I hear charity and I think about, well, that's giving to someone else. But for someone who's been on the receiving end of charity, they may hear that word in discussion about practicing charity and they may feel shame because they've been a recipient. They've been on the receiving end of someone else's charity. And so we have to think about the power of our words and what they do and the actions that are created because we speak those words into being. We give them power. Um, I think that it is especially important now. Um, we know that we might put a message on our Facebook page and we see it as something that is powerful and supportive of of a of a subject or an idea or a person or an organization or a social justice issue. And someone else may see that and read that and hear that and go, no, that's super offensive. I imagine that if I asked you all to think about a time where someone was offended by something you said, that we could all come up with a time. And most of us are not trying to speak in order to offend people. That's never our purpose, but it happens anyway. And so what we really have to figure out is when our words are so very powerful, what do we do when the power of our words hurts? She talks about words becoming steel. Well, if our words become a sword that cuts deep and harms someone, what do we do then? Another very powerful word in our faith is the word grace. We give ourselves grace. We hope that the people we've harmed will give us grace. And we apologize. We say, I'm sorry that the words that I spoke harmed you. I'm sorry that they cut deep. Please forgive me. Those are words that cut deep as well, but in a very good way. So often I see people afraid to apologize for saying something that hurts. And on the other end of that, I see people who aren't willing to offer grace and forgiveness to those who are willing to apologize for cutting deep with their words. Friends, we have to learn to be better than that. When we say things that harm, we need to be willing to apologize. And when we're harmed by words, we have to be willing to forgive. And that's so incredibly hard to do. I don't doubt that at all. I'm just as guilty as struggling with that. But it's so frustrating if we don't offer ourselves and others grace and forgiveness the same way that Jesus offered them those words to us. He offered them with the power of his death and resurrection. And if we follow that, if we believe in that, then we need to offer those same gifts of grace and forgiveness as well. Sometimes we have to offer those things to ourselves. When I say something in a sermon or in a devotion or in a meeting that offends someone and they forgive me when I've apologized, then I have to forgive myself too. When I say something that is hard for someone to hear and challenges them, I have to sit with that and say, it's okay that what I said today didn't taste like an ice cream sundae, but tasted more like a spoonful of medicine. A yucky, gross medicine that's necessary and important, but doesn't go down very easily. That's why I love Barbara Banteller's study of words, because she looks into the power of them. Our words are so incredibly powerful. God gave us the gift of speech, and we have to think before we speak those words into power about what they're going to do and what they might mean. Understanding that we may not always know, and that some days it's a hit and other days it's a miss. And that's okay too. Words have the power to do so very much. So I look forward to studying with you and exploring with you and digging deeper with you the power of words through Barbara Brown Teller's When God is Silent. It is going to be a very fascinating time to explore what words mean, because right now we know that sometimes words are all we have. God loves you, and so do I. and I'll see you again. Have a wonderful day.